Well, hello, welcome to Business Morning right here on Channels Television, where we bring to your screen the markets and the economy to sharp focus. Let's get to the top stories that set your agenda now. Before you make that trade, we see the markets are open right now. We've seen oil prices higher today, reversing the previous session's losses, buoyed by stronger than expected economic data from the world's top oil consumers and signs of easing trade tensions. We see U.S. crude inventories that fell by 3.9 million barrels to 422 million barrels last week. That's according to the Energy Information Administration. A steeper decline than forecast for a 552,000 barrel draw, suggesting stronger refinery activity, tighter supply, and increased demand. However, larger than expected build in gasoline and diesel inventories that capped the price gains. The U.S. Central Bank's latest snapshot of the economy that was released yesterday showed activity picked up in recent weeks. However, the outlook was neutral to slightly pessimistic as businesses reported that higher import tariffs were putting upward pressure on prices. I would say the federal government says it's targeting to increase the country's electricity supply from the current output of about 5,600 megawatts to 8,500 megawatts within the next 12 to 18 months. The Director General of the Bureau of Public Enterprises stated this yesterday in Abuja during a senior leadership team retreat for top management members of the newly established Nigerian Independent System Operator. He highlighted that the move is part of efforts to stabilize and expand Nigeria's power infrastructure. The BPEDG also tasks NISO to take the lead in improving grid management efficiency and delivery on targets. And the federal government says it is set to boost local fish production and reduce its reliance on imports. This according to the Minister of Marine and Blue Economy, Oyetola, speaking at a high-level consultative meeting with fisheries cooperative groups in Abuja on Wednesday. The minister outlined a bold vision aimed at transforming the nation's aquaculture sector into to make it more predominant there, to improve employment and export competitiveness. He explained that Nigeria spent approximately $1.2 billion annually on fish imports, but now with the right investments and initiatives, the government seeks to save around $1.5 billion annually. And back to the inflation report now. We're getting reactions at this time. And the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, that's CPPE, has advocated the activation of trade policy instruments to bring down imported input costs in the economy. In a statement reacting to June inflation report, which indicates a 0.75% drop from the previous rate in May, the economic think tank says while inflation may have eased in the months under review, it is curious that despite the stability in the exchange rate, core inflation is still on the upward trend. According to the CEO of CPPE, tariff policies need to be further recalibrated to ease the cost of critical inputs for the production and services sectors of the economy. He added that the exchange rate for the computation of import duty needs to be reviewed to ease trade costs. And the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry is calling for deeper collaboration between private and public sector in the second half of 2025. This was the high point of the mid-year review by the president, that's Mr. Gabriel Idahosa, yesterday. Take a listen.
An Outlook conference for the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. It allows reflections on developments in the first half of the year, scrutinizing of macroeconomic policies and business trends, and outline practical recommendations for a more resilient and inclusive economy.
We must approach the remainder of this year with renewed resolve, strategic focus, and collaborative spirit. The transforming our economy is a shared responsibility. Government, business, civil society, and development partners must align their efforts towards common goals. We must move from policy rhetoric to implementation, from isolated efforts in silos to integrated strategies, from short-term fixes to long-term planning. And happily, the tax environment has provided that space for significant capacity for long-term planning around anything that has to do with tax.
Tax reformation will be prominent in the second half as the country prepares for implementation of the new tax laws in January 2026.
We are working on implementing that provision of the law. Part of what we have in mind is to set up call centers. In the law, there's a provision that says they must dispense with issues within 14 days. So if you have an issue and you report it, of course, if someone is trying to close down your business because they're trying to collect illegal taxes, they will deal with that immediately. But in very complicated scenarios, we say not more than 14 days. So the structure will be created to make that happen, because that's when people feel the real impact. But it has to be that those people are aware. Otherwise, if you're not aware, you won't know how to escalate. So all in all, we want to try and redefine how we do business in Nigeria. We want to redefine the role of government efficiency, and how that stimulates economic activities for the benefit of all of us.
While there is high anticipation in the new tax law, there are still concerns on increased energy costs, regulatory uncertainty, limited credit access, and infrastructural deficiencies.
All right, we've got that inflation data, and definitely that's going to stare what's the decision that's for next week, therefore the MPC. That's going to decide how much it's going to cost you to borrow money in the economy. So we've got the data for June there. That's 22.22%. Let's talk to Mr. Bismarck Rouhani now, CEO of Financial Derivatives Company. Great to have you on the show, sir.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we finally have that data, even though we're still waiting for other data, for the Nigerian economy from Q1. Talk to me about this latest one now. For the month of month, I'm seeing inflation rate doesn't seem to be that good, even though year on year seems fine.
Yes, when you have a difference between the year on year and the month on month, it always brings you back to the point of what is the base effect. What was the economy looking like at this time last year? If you look at all those variables, you can see that the downward trend in inflation was maybe due to base year effects. But having said that, because core inflation has increased, because food inflation has increased, because month-on-month inflation has increased, it tells you something that the structural defects, structural rigidities in the economy still remain. So what you're having is some transient movements. But if you have had transient movement for 3 months consecutively, it means that the trend is actually becoming your friend. So that's what you normally say in investment. So having said that, what are the inflation expectations? Inflation expectations are more important than historical inflation. The expectations are that, generally speaking, that the price of petrol is going to decline because Dangote is doing all that it can to achieve uniform pricing across the country. The expectations are that the exchange rate is stabilizing, even though it's appreciating against a falling dollar, but the fears of a massive devaluation are no longer there. Also, there's every indication to show that the Central Bank of Nigeria is trying to contain money supply growth. With these three factors put together, one should have no doubt about the fact that inflation is likely to be moderating. Having said that, we have to bear in mind something also, that this is the planting season, right? And we are going towards the harvest as it comes along. At that point, the price of foodstuff begins to come down. But we are seeing some indications, some very frightening indications. Bag of rice, which had gone down all the way to about 75,000, is now back up to 87,000 naira, and is likely to head towards 90,000. Beans is up by about almost 6.25% to 85,000, and strangely, we are seeing tomatoes also moving in that direction. So we are not out of the woods, but definitely we are not going to be suffering from major inflationary bouts as was earlier feared.
All right, let's look deeper into the data now. We see for urban inflation, that's about 22.72% year on year. On a month to month, that's about 2.11% higher than rural inflation. That's at 20.85% year on year. Month on month, 0.63. Do you think the rural side of things is seeing some easing there with inflation?
Well, the reality is that the difference between urban and rural inflation is always explained by the cost of transportation. So if there are two components for the cost of transportation. One is the cost of fuel, the other one is the state of the roads. What we had in the last month was the Mokwa flood effect, which pushed up the cost of transporting goods from the food basket to the food consuming markets. But at the same time, we also had the price of petrol come down. So while on one hand, we had petrol moderating the price of cost of logistics, we had the bad roads and the flood effect moving the other direction. Therefore, in general, we would have had a neutral position, but generally speaking, we've seen cost increases, which need to be worked on. So the work of the fiscal authorities made very clearly defined for itself. One, do something about the road network. There's been a lot of talk about roads and projects, but the roads that lead somewhere are different from the roads that lead to nowhere. So many of the projects that we're talking about are roads that lead to nowhere, right? And now we have to change that orientation. We have to immediately get the road concessioning project off the ground. Immediately, the government and the people cannot wait. If not, you will end up with happy statistics and unhappy people.
All right, so still, looking at the regional side of things here for inflation, we see the highest annual inflation by state. That was in Borno there at 31.6%. Monthly increases, that was much higher in Ekiti, about 5.39% higher. Then we see monthly deflation in Zamfara, Niger State, and Plateau. Help us break this down, sir.
No, you see, it's very clear. There was the Mokwa flood effect. There are also other items, but in Borno State, you can tell because there was the whole Boko Haram, the insurgency and insecurity rearing its head again. So we are back to the usual suspects: insecurity, road network, and then smuggling. In Ekiti State, we can see part of that is because some of the products are going across the country, but obviously there's a lot of liquidity and income in the southwest because of the high price of cocoa. So they're having a mid-crop harvest. They're making cocoa went as high as $9,000 a ton. So you can see that there's some liquidity effect in the cocoa producing areas. In the northeast, there's insecurity. In the north central, Plateau and all that, there's also insecurity and also the quality of the roads. But more than anything else, the national trend, where you're comparing last year with this year, points to something very clear, that the base year effects will be out. And then when we have a stable base year effect, you begin to see inflation either stay there and everything now revolve around logistics, output, increases in output, because that is where it matters. Output increases in production, output increases in getting products to the market, logistics costs bringing it down, and availability of finance. All of these things will play into what the Central Bank of Nigeria, the MPC, is going to be talking about on Monday and Tuesday. So we have some interesting days ahead of us.
Yeah, definitely interesting days. But what are you seeing for the next meetings? Are you seeing a cut at this point or another hold?
Definitely, I'm not a gambling man. I'm not a speculator. But I think that my gut feeling, my instincts and intuition tells me that there will be a cut or 25 basis points. Why do I say that? Because global inflation has increased. Nigerian inflation is declining. Depending on what methodology you use, even if you use the old methodology and add 10 to what the new numbers are, it will still come out at about 32. The peak was about 35. So there is the trend is our friend. But the difference, because the US and and the UK and even in Europe, inflation is increasing while inflation is declining here. It gives us some wiggle room, and therefore the probability is that maybe 40% hold, but 60% a drop of about 25 basis points, and that will not kill the currency. The currency is strengthening because of the discipline in the monetary policy framework, explicit inflation targeting, and actually having a transparent foreign exchange market. That has helped. If we didn't have that, by now, the Nigerian inflation data would have been frightening, both to those of us domestically and more importantly, to those international investors. But right now, everybody seems to be aligned that the Nigerian economy is limping its way out of the crisis.
Right, and talking about the trend, being your friend at this time, we've seen the Nigeria's equities market there have this monster rally, hitting new highs, regardless of inflation being elevated. But we're seeing currency stability, and if you look at other asset classes, we're also seeing the likes of Bitcoin there, hitting new highs at this point. Mr. Rani, does this continue, or is there some kind of black swan event that could change the direction of what we're seeing?
We call this financialization of markets. When you are financializing the market, all of a sudden, because of stability, because of alignment of global markets with Nigerian market, we are now beginning to see people begin to take advantage of this. But we shouldn't get carried away. But the important thing here is that that the stock market is, the stock prices are the present value of future earnings. What happened in the last 3 years was that a lot of companies, big ones, banks and others, were hit by foreign exchange losses due to international obligations they had. Now, most of these institutions have domesticated their debt. The Nigerian banks have actually increased their buffers and increased their, in fact, the GT Bank has issued paper in London and it was oversubscribed. So what you are seeing is that because the fear of foreign exchange losses have been eliminated or minimized, you are likely, so a lot of investors are now playing in and leaning in to the fact that the earnings are going to come out in second and third quarters are going to be much stronger than last year, and therefore are already pricing that into the shares. So a lot of people are rushing in to buy that. You could see what happened first Holdco yesterday. There was some shifting around. The turnover increased sharply. But generally speaking, we think that those companies that are exchange rate sensitive, MTNs, the Dangote Cements, the Nestle's, the Guinnesses are all going to be doing much better than they did last year. Will they claw back all their losses before? They will claw that back over time. But people are investing in their capacity to deliver value. The EBITDAs are all up. And quite frankly, we think that it's a good year. But again, like markets go, markets are cyclical. There's always a boom to bust cycle. This will happen for the next 6 months. We are going to be seeing an increase in earnings, increase in stock prices. But a point will come where there will be a correction, but not now. So right now, the trend is our friend as far as inflation is concerned. The trend is our friend as far as earnings are concerned, and everything else, not touch wood. We should be the December should be a pretty not only dirty but also interesting December.
Okay, so you heard it here. We're expecting a dirty and interesting December for 2025. Thank you so much, Mr. Bismarck Rouhani, for breaking it down for us there as the CEO, Financial Derivatives Company. Thank you for coming on today, sir.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so with the latest inflation numbers at this point, we find out how stablecoins and digital assets are helping some Nigerians hedge against high inflation. That's next. Just stay with us. All right, with Nigeria facing high inflation, but currency stability at this point, but there's still those financial challenges. We're hearing that digital assets, especially stablecoins, are helping people and businesses with payments, cross-border trade and remittances, with over $20 billion in yearly remittances and growing, crypto adoption. We see Nigeria as leading Africa in digital currency use at this point. But how's that playing into inflation? Let's speak to Uzoma James, the regional manager, West Africa for Yellow Card. Great to have you on the show, Uzoma.
Hi, great to have you. Great to have me here. Thank you so much.
Right, so we're seeing, the latest inflation numbers still elevated, even though we're still a downward trend, with that. But we're hearing that, some smart investors are using stable coins, at this point to help hedge against some of the macro issues there. So, break it down for me. How's this really playing out on the ground?
Okay, thank you so much for that question. I myself, I use stable coins to hedge against inflation as well. And I've seen a lot of creators, influencers, as well as small business owners use stable coins to hedge against currency inflation. It also helps make ease with business and the likes. So yes, we have a lot of people that are currently adopting stable coins because one USDT, for example, USDT is a stable coin, is pegged at $1. And we see a lot of people using this to store value so that, they wouldn't make much losses in their businesses.
All right, so, talking about, use cases at this point, it seems it's just good for cross-border payments, at this time. Nothing really, when it comes to everyday use.
Not just cross-border payments, you can also make use of it to store value, like I said previously. But yes, a lot of businesses make use of it. I'll give you an example. I went to Idumota recently, and I saw a lot of small business owners that wanted to import certain products, coming together, saving money, giving someone they trust Naira, and that person helping them to make cross-border payments using stable coins. So yes, it's largely very effective in terms of remittances, but you get to see freelancers, influencers also making use of it to store value.
And yeah, we see the data there showing that Nigeria is a top user, of stable coins. Talk to me about when this trend, really started, why are so many people adopting it, at this time? Is this a sign of what to expect, in the future?
It is a sign of what to expect in the future. It is a sign that is already happening now. Give it time. Technology will definitely advance. There will definitely be new technologies. And as businesses strive to remain competitive in the market, they would always look for easier, faster, cheaper ways to remain competitive globally. So yes, it is a trend. You see a lot of people on WhatsApp, on Telegram, doing trades, doing this transaction, and it's happening everywhere. You see employers of labor employing people and paying them in stable coins as well. You see small and medium, both large businesses also adopting stable coins. I would say one of the reasons why this trend is so widespread is because of the dollar shortage. People will always find solution to problems. So due to the dollar shortage, since one stable coin is equivalent to one USD, people also make use of it as a solution to their problem. So that's why we have widespread adoption at the moment.
So, with that kind of usage, I guess it's safe to say that it's reducing pressure on the local currency, at this point. Talk to me about how, stable coins are changing remittances in Nigeria. And is that bad for the banks at this point?
I would say, I wouldn't say it's bad for the banks. I would say it's a tool for the bank if the bank can start making use of it. Banks like JP Morgan have started making use of stable coins. They have their own stable coins in the works. If traditional banks in Nigeria can also imbibe that, that would be a huge advancement in technology. In the future, I see a lot of banks incorporating stable coins in their own infrastructure as well.
And do you see, since, you're not seeing it as bad for the banks, is that collaboration, with,
yes.
Stablecoin issuers and, traditional banks at this time, especially in Nigeria?
We recently partnered with Visa, and Visa is using stablecoins to solve most of these problems in the grassroots level. With Visa making that announcement, definitely banks are beginning to wake up and reach out and say, hey, how can we make use of this tool? How can we, since globally accepted banks and platforms are beginning to use stable coins, we have a lot reaching out saying that, hey, would like to partner, would like to work together. So yes, definitely.
And with what we're seeing in the U.S. at this time, it's crypto week right now in the U.S. There's a lot of legislation discussions there on setting rules for this industry. Do you think with what we're seeing play out at this point, this would mean more adoption globally for stablecoins?
I think the crypto adoption in Nigeria, it's way higher, if you ask me. There will definitely continuously be adoption. A lot of people are now getting more comfortable with using it. Although I do believe that if regulatory were to come in and there is policies being put in place, the adoption would definitely increase way more than we are seeing now. But yes, there's a lot of adoption because remittances using stable coins is way cheaper, so people embrace it a lot.
And when you say cheaper, at this point, how cheap are we talking here? If I'm trying to send $1 million to the US right now with stable coins, how cheap are we talking?
As low as 100 naira.
100 naira to send
Yes,
$1 million abroad. That is quite incredible, definitely. Talking about rules at this point, looking at the case in Nigeria, we've set some rules here. That's the Securities and Exchange Commission. How do our rules compare to, other African countries?
It's the same rails when you talk of the same infrastructure. Technology is going global. Just as someone in US has WhatsApp, I can always message them with WhatsApp. We have a very young, populous, tech-savvy population in Nigeria. So it's the same technology we are actually making use of. So that is why we can remain competitive globally, even from Nigeria as a country. So that doesn't change the fact that we cannot position ourselves strategically, because definitely we are using the same technology and even better.
All right, so it's 2025. We've seen a lot of adoption right now. I'm trying to imagine what to expect in the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay, I would link this up with 3 key points. The first one would be regulation will determine clarity. It will drive adoption. When we have good policies that put fraudsters in place, I know a lot of people are scared of crypto because of Ponzi schemes and all those sorts. But if regulation is in place and the right policies, I see these bad actors being put in check. And in the next 2 or 3 years, next 3 to 5 years, a lot of people would be using stable coins. A lot of people will be adopting it. And I see a synergy between traditional banking institutions as well. It will be a game changer in the space. It will help small and medium businesses remain competitive in the financial space as well.
Right, and it still takes me back to when we had that issue there with algorithmic stable coins, where we saw one of them actually depeg, from the US dollar. And I'm wondering if that risk is totally, behind the industry, at this time, that whole depegging risk, because it'd be quite painful to be sending $1 million abroad and the stable coin depegs.
Could you say that again, please? I lost you for a bit.
So I'm talking about the algorithmic stable coins, the issue we had in the past where the stable coin depegged, from the US dollar, it went to less than $1. Is that risk behind the industry, right now, talking about depegging, when the currency actually depegs, from the real world asset?
Okay, what I tell people is, I think that happened with USDT, but there's also USDC, and with USDC, we do not see that happening. We do not see that happening. So if one that is pegged go down, you always have alternatives that are pegged that you can rely on.
All right, we'll definitely keep tracking this growth. Thank you so much, Uzoma James, as Regional Manager, West Africa for Yellow Card. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, now let's get to other conversations at this point. Earlier this week, See the World marked World Youth Skills Day. That was earlier, I think, on the 15th. The global conversation has shifted to a particular theme at this point: youth empowerment through AI and digital skills. In an era defined by rapid technological advancements, we see the ability to harness artificial intelligence and navigate the digital landscape is no longer a luxury now, but a necessity for the next generation. This theme underscores a critical pathway for economic inclusion, innovation, and societal progress, particularly for the vibrant youth population across Africa. Today we'll delve into how equipping young people with these transformative skills can truly unlock their potential and shape a more prosperous future for us all. Joining us for this conversation, we have Olashko Abedin Okpeyemi, is a Global Director, Brain Builders Youth Development Initiative. Great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ladi.
So given the theme, for this year, youth empowerment through AI and digital skills, what specific, AI and digital competencies do you believe are most crucial, for young people to acquire today to thrive in this ever-evolving job market? I've seen some people tell me that my job is at risk here.
All right, thank you very much for that as well. So I would like to put it succinctly as well, that either we like it or not, AI has come to stay. And I do not subscribe to the opinion that your job needs to be on the line because of AI. What I tell people is AI is a smart young person. You've got to look for ways through which AI could make you much more smarter. What I mean by that is AI is also based on the data that we are fed it with. Without human being as well, AI will not be able to churn out information that will be credible and stand the test of time. So that really means for AI to perform optimally as well, it needs the human angle as well that needs to train the chatbot to give responses in near real time. And artificial intelligence will make you much more smarter as a young person or as a youth if you see it as a support system and not just a 100% reliant. Because, of course, during the last conversation you were having with Usama, I said you're talking about algorithm bias as well. These are some of the issues with artificial intelligence. So, succinctly put, Ladi, AI is not going to take your job. I don't think so. You are a very smart man. And it's also an admonition to other young persons who are out there as well to see which AI could be complementary to their job and not depending on it 100%. Now back to the theme of the What Use Skill Days for 2025. There is also a need for us to set the tone that, the What Use Skill Day started in 2014, if I'm not mistaken. That's about 11 years ago, to celebrate the resilience of young person as far as empowerment, entrepreneurship, technology, or vocational education is concerned. You quite agree with me that even here in Nigeria, there was a particular time that the federal government, had to make compulsory the teaching of graduate safe entrepreneurship to solve the problem of unemployment. Year in, year out, we see data being shown about the National Bureau of Statistics. We see, different international organizations carrying out research on the level of unemployment, not only in Nigeria, but across Africa and globally, which I tell people, it's a cankerworm. It's a table that has been shattered. So one of the methodologies that the government is now using to solve that, aside the fact that days like these are being celebrated, aside the fact that there is an incorporation of teaching of entrepreneurship in school, is to, create different initiatives to empower much more young person. Skills like web development, software, front-end and back-end, skills like, even teaching people how to prompt artificial intelligence is a skill now. Because it's not enough for you to just ask GPT anything. That's why, as an organization, we did a recruitment recently, and believe you me, about 25% of those use AI didn't use it smartly. They just copy and paste. It was just a copy and paste, and they used to apply. And as an individual who has launched 2 different AI solutions, to a large extent, I've been sleeping and dreaming AI for the last 2-3 years. So when you use AI, there's a high likelihood that I'm gonna know, because there are some nuances that relates to artificial intelligence. A critical part of the new job that is emerging now is, teaching AI prompting, AI engineer, and of course, creatively teaching people how to maybe perhaps use AI to make videos and make edit perfectly in real time to solve a whole lot of things. So the job market will evolve. Absolutely, I agree. With some organizations have to downsize and cut costs, absolutely, because of AI. But will people still continue to be relevant? Of course, 100%.
Right. Okay, let's talk about reliance now on artificial intelligence. You did say you can spot, when, something is coming from AI, at this point. So how do you balance it? How do you make sure you're not relying too much on artificial intelligence and you're not losing your natural intelligence?
Yeah, thank you very much. Creativity and innovation should be at the core of our work as a young person. As a journalist, if you use artificial intelligence to write a story, that human angle, that voicing, that nuances that you want to pass to your audience obviously will not be there. Because the same AI might be used by about 3 or 4 people. It's like you calling for an application for a fellowship now or for a journalism workshop, and there's a question, why should we select you to attend this AI journalism fellowship? There's a high likelihood that if Ladi and Abidin is applying and Ladi is using AI and Abidin is using AI, most likely our responses would tilt towards the same direction. But what about if I have my own story about how I've been carrying out my journalism activities? You work with channels, I work with Fact Check Africa, how the impact stories around, placing African business on a global spot is an achievement for me. And I've been trying to use that and leverage that as well to improve the economic situation of the country and the continent. The story is different from exactly what AI will give me. AI will only scribble resources available online, and sometimes that aligns with what you have to your name and give you response. It can't be the same as you who want to sit down, who want to craft that responses. That's one. Secondly, if you also notice as well, if you are not smart about using AI, when AI, especially GPT, gives you a response, the last paragraph sums up the first 4 or the first 5 or the first 10 paragraphs. There is also the usage of Ivan for that. There's also the usage of some grammar that is aligned with GPT or Gemini AI as well. So if you are the type that have been interacting with AI for quite a number of years, like mine for the last 2 years, there's a high likelihood that when AI is used to send a response or send an email or send a letter to you, you will most likely know. That is also not to say that 100% I could know. The next question that might be ruminating in your mind, Ladi, is the fact that over the past month, academicians have been saying that there has been a tool that was developed to, get plagiarism of AI. And I've had academicians, talked about that it's not perfect. That's one of the biases of AI as well. That's to tell us AI is not 100% perfect, like I started with. It is the information that we have filled with the AI that the AI will churn. And that's why, as Nigerian, as an Africa, we need to, I commend the federal government to the Ministry of Digital Communication for what they are doing about, developing skills around AI in partnership with data science. We need to develop capacity. The level of AI literacy in Nigeria and in Africa is at a very low hub. So that's why corporate organization, government agency, policy makers, and individuals as well needs to team up together to ensure that we develop a curriculum that stand the test of time, so that, of course, Nigeria will not do a catch-up, or Africa will not do a catch-up with artificial intelligence, because now it has come to stay. It has been built without us 100% on the table. So we need to look for ways through which we can shatter that table, rearrange the table in such a way that, our own nuances, our own languages, the data that AI is going to give us speaks the Nigerian voice, speaks the African voice, and is domesticated or localized to our context here.
Right. And do you think there's a risk AI will make you dumber, or is it just a given fact that AI will make you smarter, with your natural intelligence? And what do you think kids should start, messing around with AI, kids below 10?
Yeah, thank you very much. In our own organization, our Brain Builders Development Initiative, we have just developed an AI literacy curriculum, especially for kids and secondary school students, because we need to use a bottom-top approach for this strategy. So we will be, in the next couple of weeks and months, we'll be going to schools as well to use this curriculum to teach AI literacy in primary, secondary, and tertiary institutions as well. We are also working on a gamification flashcard, because we also discover from our interaction with kids that they tend to interact more with games as far as learning new skill is concerned in a very fun way or in a fun environment. So my admonition would be to every critical stakeholder, parents, school owners, teachers, to look for ways through which they could use AI resources safely, in quotes, please, because there is a subject of a conversation around AI ethics, AI safety, and AI governance. That's another ball game entirely. So while we are trying to adopt this as well, we must make sure that, in teaching AI literacy, we know about the nuances. And that's why for our own literacy project, for our own AI literacy project that we are working on, we want to work with teachers to empower the teachers through the Train the Trainers workshop, then cascade down to schools as well. Not only that as well, working with people in the grassroots community who ordinarily might not have access to internet. But believe you me, we have seen that, especially during COVID-19, even octogenarians and septuagenarians have access to WhatsApp platform. That's why we are also not leaving anyone behind by going to the grassroots community.
Right.
Then the question of making you dull or dullard. I tell people, if you're not very smart, you can't use AI. So if you are a dullard naturally before, AI cannot be smarter, to be honest.
Wait, so if you were naturally dumb, AI will make you smart?
To be honest, because I just gave you a case study of a person applying for a job and did a copy and paste without even making any edits. And, use that inverted comma and even that AI will give you, include your name here. It shows you're naturally dull.
All right, so, I watch a lot of movies. We've seen movies where artificial intelligence becomes, self-aware and, takes over the world. And I'm wondering, at some point, are we going to have, people that install artificial intelligence into their natural intelligence? Are you seeing that kind of development in the future?
To be honest, I'm seeing it's tilting that way because, believe you me, when we firstly heard about AI, and let me firstly say this, AI is not just something recent. It's just that the booze is all around the corner now with the advent of ChatGPT. If you have used Grammarly before, it's AI that made it possible for you to use Grammarly to correct your sentences. So it shows AI is not just a new thing, it's been in existence. But because of the involvement, especially with the development of GPT-3, GPT-4, and now advancement are happening, there's a high probability that invention and innovation could happen, and you could support your natural brain or your natural instincts with artificial intelligence. So at that point, I don't know, maybe you have seen these news stories that in some countries now, AI are being used as complementary effort to perform, health checks. So it shows we are really getting there.
Right. We're moving really fast at this point. Thank you so much. It's so funny how GPT sounds like GPT, like when, trying to scam somebody. Well, thank you so much for helping us unpack this. Olashikpo Okpeyemi is the Global Director of Brain Builders Youth Development Initiative. Thank you for coming out today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Cheers.
All right, so we have Inijo Mekwa coming in with, I think, natural intelligence, or is it artificial intelligence, in his bringing at this point?
I think you should be sued.
Why?
How could you compare GPT
with GPT?
To GPT.
Yeah, it kind of
rhymes.
Kind of rhymes a bit.
I'm going to take this up.
Yeah, maybe.
I'll take it up.
Yeah.
Because I'm not even sure if you're laddie or AI.
Because they're already using AI to trick people online with my image. That's GPT,
and your voice.
And my voice.
Or something like your voice.
Yeah, it sounds weird sometimes.
All right, laddie. Well, AI is certainly taking the world, but I like one thing your guest said, which is if you're dull, AI will only make your door loud.
Wow.
He talked about an interview that they had, and then somebody copied, because they allowed them to use it, just copied everything. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on, use your brain a bit.
Some of your natural intelligence, so
small. Use your brain a bit. All right, good morning, everyone. Let's see what's happening in the global space. We start from the United Kingdom, where unemployment rose to 4.7% in May. And then we see that wage growth has also slowed. So it rose expectedly, according to data that was released, while pay growth slowed slightly, offering room for the Bank of England to cut interest rates once more next month. According to the Office for National Statistics, the jobless rate rose 4.7% in the 3 months to May, above the 4.16 in the prior month, at which the rate was expected to stay. Well, this was the highest level since June 2021. Meanwhile, pay growth across the whole economy, excluding bonuses, fell to an annual 5% rate in the 3 months to May. That's below 5.3% seen in the prior month. a level which was revised higher from 5.2 previously. The weakness in the labour market, along with a drop in pay growth, is likely to help the Bank of England policymakers decide to cut interest rates once more at their next meeting in August, with the UK Central Bank having reduced interest rate by 4 quarter-point steps since August last year. Well, British inflation, we saw yesterday, it was up, touching a 3-year high of 1.7 compared to last September. We move to the United States now. President Donald Trump has said that Coca-Cola has agreed to use cane sugar in its beverages in the U.S. after his discussion with the company. A spokesperson for Coca-Cola said that the Atlanta-based company will share details of new offerings soon and that it appreciates Trump's enthusiasm for its product. Coca-Cola, produced for the U.S. market, is typically sweetened with corn syrup, while the company uses cane sugar in other countries. Now, the Trump administration Make America Healthy Again, MAHA, not MAGA this time, MAHA initiative, named for the social movement aligned with the Health Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr., has pushed food companies to alter their formulations to remove ingredients like artificial dyes from their food. Kennedy has also been critical of the amount of sugar consumed in the American diet and has said that updated dietary guidelines released this summer would advise Americans to eat whole food. A May report by MAHA Commission, a panel convened by Trump and tasked with identifying the root causes of chronic disease, says that substantial consumption of high fructose corn syrup could play a role in childhood obesity and other conditions. Medical experts recommend limiting added sugar in diet, but have not identified significant differences between cane sugar and high fructose corn syrup. Let's talk to our correspondent in Washington on this and a whole lot more. Maria, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning.
Yeah, so you guys, your health is also top priority for President Trump. It's not just MAGA now, it's MAHA. So Coca-Cola will be using cane sugar. I wonder if Americans have started reacting to this.
Well, Americans have been requesting and looking for healthier options with food choices. Unfortunately, here in the U.S., there's a lot of, as you mentioned, artificial dyes, artificial sweeteners, and a lot of things in the diet that do cause major health concerns, especially when you think about the fast food marketplace. And so that has been something that has been a long-standing push across America, especially when you think about our communities that don't have the resources to always go out and buy the whole foods, as you mentioned, some of those diets that will allow them to have healthier, longer lives. And so I think this is not one that people would complain about. I think this is a movement that people would welcome, especially, as you mentioned, the U.S. is using corn syrup in Coca-Cola, while other countries are using real cane sugar. So Coca-Cola is one of those products. It's a huge brand here in the U.S. and one of those products that is being used and drank daily by a majority and a large portion of the population.
So, I mean, President Trump is really being considerate of not just the pocket, but also the health, because anyway, the health will end up in the pockets. You have to spend money for health and all of that. But we saw the CPI numbers, and we saw a rise in it, and then we saw the Producers' Price Index that was flat. And the analysis is that the tariff, the impact of the tariff is sipping in. That's why we saw the inflation up and all of that. But how much of it is being felt by people?
So when you look at the larger piece here, you mentioned inflation, you mentioned the tariffs. The country is really feeling a lot of the impacts of that. And I think that is a challenge for Americans, trying to see where we're going to end up. Obviously, we know that we have not been able to cut interest rates yet because still trying to ensure that inflation stabilizes and that the American people are able to sustain and whatever that needs to be done by the Federal Reserve to drive down inflation can be done. And so I think think that's where Americans are hopeful that if there are any additional tariff concerns and if there's any additional pressure, that there can be a short-lived impact on the everyday consumer within America. But again, there have been some countries that have not passed on the full tariffs to consumers, obviously, because that would mean they would totally be out of business with the United States because people wouldn't be able to afford purchasing from them. But companies like Walmart, who are traditionally low cost, ability for people to go in and buy things at a very reduced rate, are having to increase prices a little bit because of these tariffs, which obviously is impacting those who are regular shoppers and are in need of some of those reduced costs.
And as the world counts down to August 1st, when, some of those tariffs are supposed to take off, I wonder if that also breeds another level of fear, or will it not really have a lot of impact?
Well, I think it does definitely have an impact. I think that people are watching it, but we've also seen the president take complete turns. We've seen countries come to the table very close to the last minute. We've seen where he's been able to negotiate or where he has extended the potential for tariffs. And so I think that as people are concerned about the tariffs, I think people are more so focused to see if in fact it will go into place and really understanding where what will happen across the board for the American people as it relates to their actual pockets. But we know that the biggest piece right now is really around inflation concerns. And secondly, the real issue too is around the wages of Americans. And so as we begin to address the issues around foreign relations and the way in which the U.S. is doing business overseas and across the world, I think Americans are hopeful that we can then begin to adjust and deal with some of the wage concerns that if those are impacted and those are put in a positive light, some of the other concerns will become less of an impact on the average American.
All right. Thank you so much, Maria, for keeping us up to date on what's going on there. All right, now moving outside the U.S., Japan's export in June contracted 0.5% year-over-year, extending the 1.7% drop seen in May as deliveries continue to decline for the second straight month. The decrease in export was a reversal of the 0.5 rise expected by economists and comes amid the lack of breakthrough in trade talks with the United States. Exports to China, which is Japan's largest trading partner, were down 4.7%, while shipments to the U.S. also declined by a whole 11.4% year-on-year, deepening from 11% fall in May. The data comes as Japan now faces a 25% reciprocal tariff from the U.S. that's supposed to take effect August 1st, except, of course, they reach a deal before then. And then we move to India, where that country says it is confident of meeting its oil demands or needs from alternative sources if Russian supplies are hit by secondary sanctions. This was expressed by the oil minister. And earlier the week, U.S. President Donald Trump had warned that countries purchasing Russian exports could face sanctions if Moscow fails to reach a peace agreement with Ukraine within 50 days. And to some stories that will interest Ladi very well, the future of trial crypto regulation bills was thrown into question Wednesday after a second day of opposition from Conservative House Republicans held up the legislation for 10 hours before it finally moved forward, to the joy of Ladi Williams. Fresh opposition also emerged over the course of the day from moderate Republicans who objected to last-minute changes intended to appease an original group of hardline conservative holdouts whose no vote had tacked the bill. So I think the most important thing there is that it moved forward. And following that, holders of digital tokens issued by World Liberty Financial, one of crypto ventures of the family of Donald Trump, very important, voted on Wednesday to make them tradable. So good days ahead for Ladi and Donald Trump family and the crypto family. You guys are you're moving forward.
Yeah, crypto week, I guess, not looking so bad.
I know, right?
With some of the rules, and we're seeing Ethereum hit a new high, at this point, and we're trying to make America healthy again with sugarcane.
The Maha.
Maha. Good
then
times.
We'll do Nigeria too, Naha.
Naha.
Yeah.
If Nigeria. Well, I guess we're healthy people at this point. Well, that was the show today. Thank you so much for watching. Looking at the stock market right now on the investing.com terminal, we're seeing the most active trades there. First Holdco, Nigerian Breweries, Access Holdings, Japol Gold. Those are the most active trades right now. We'll bring back at 1 p.m. what's playing out in those markets. Thank you for watching. I'm Ladi Williams. Bye-bye.